Hi, I'm Lara.
I'm Brock.
And welcome to TEFL Talk. Hi, welcome to our very first episode of TEFL Talk. I'm here with my co-host, Brock Brady.
How you doing?
Brock is our resident expert in all things TEFL, and he's going to walk us through the 5 do's and don'ts of classroom management. So without further ado, Brock, can you kick us off with the first do of classroom management?
Okay, the first do of classroom management is do use attention getters. Well, that got my attention, but I don't think it settled me and made me ready for work.
Okay.
And you don't have to make a lot of noise to use an attention getter. One of them that's very often used is that the teacher puts her hand up and walks around the room and gestures to each of the students to put their hand up as well. And you can even put your finger in front of your mouth to indicate silence. And you walk around, and within a short time, everybody in the class has their hand raised. Everyone is being quiet, and you're ready to go to work.
Great. Okay, so the first do of classroom management is do use attention grabbers, but not the frightening ones like I did with Brock. All right, how about do number 2?
Well, do number 2 is very similar. If you're doing a transition in the classroom and you need the students to move, you want them to move in a timely fashion. For example, you might say, okay, get with your partner. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are you there? Okay, great.
So something like move, 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 move would be maybe not in your classroom management repertoire?
Well, if you were out on the football field, it would be great.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. All right, so number 2 is use countdowns. All right, Brock, how about number 3?
Number 3 is give wait time. I love wait time. I've found that almost in every case, if you give 8 count for wait time, somebody eventually will raise their hand and come up with an answer. So I ask a question, I'm thinking in my head, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous now. 6, 1,000, 7, 1,000. There's a hand. You're giving them time to think.
Okay.
That's the problem with the typical teacher response. They're quiet for too long, and you cut in before they've had a chance to come up with an answer.
Okay, great. So do number 3 is give wait time, and specifically an 8-second count. All right, Brock, how about number 4?
Number 4 is be consistent and stick to routines. One of the things you want to do is to make your class structure as boring as possible. And that seems counterintuitive, I know, but it's the idea is that if you do the same kinds of things in every class and you use the same routines over and over again, that's something your students no longer have to process. It's part of the environment. If you think about it, a lot of what we've looked at so far today has all been routines and ways to make the class consistent.
Great, excellent. So do number 4 is be consistent. And our last of the do's before we start in on the don'ts.
Do comprehension checks. And a comprehension check is what you do when you want to make sure that the students have understood. Very often teachers will ask, do you understand? And the student will say, well, some students will be better than that one. A comprehension check is to make sure that the students really understand what you want them to do when you're giving directions. We'll try one more time. So, what is it you're going to do?
I am going to practice the 5 do's and routines.
Why?
Because I want to have successful classroom management. And our last do is do number 5, do comprehension checks. Okay, Brock, thank you for walking us through the 5 do's of classroom management. Let's go ahead and shift gears to the 5 don'ts of classroom management. So can you kick us off with the first don't of classroom management?
Oh, don't waste time. Make crisp starts. A lot of us, I think, have a tendency when we're ready to start a class to look at students coming into the classroom. Somebody's fooling with their books, a couple other people having conversation, and you're going to have some students in the class who weren't walking in and out or talking to their friend, who are sitting there waiting to learn, and they're going to be getting very bored and frustrated. It's being fair to your students. And again, it's another routine. Students know when they walk into your class that, bang, at that point, you'll start out students.
Okay, so don't number 1 is don't waste time. Make sure you get that class started crisp and on time. Great. Can you go ahead and take us through number 2?
Don't accept less than 100% participation when it comes to classroom activities. The point is that once you start an activity, you need to go around and make sure that everybody knows what it is and everybody is doing it from the beginning. Because the longer you wait, if you have to start somebody to work late, that's going to make them feel negative in many ways, but it's also disrupting the rest of the class.
Brock drives a hard bargain. He expects 100%, even though I should mention that 90% is technically an A. Okay, so don't number 2 is don't accept less than 100%.
That's right.
All right, don't number 3.
Don't
Number 3.
There we go. Is don't let students opt out of participating. And a technique that's used by Doug Lemoff in his Teach Like Champion book, which I find very effective, is if you have a student who wasn't able to answer, what you do is you go on to another student, ask them the question, and let's assume they get it right. Then you would ask that second student again, now what was that answer? And they would give it. And then you would go back to the first student and ask them the question. Now, if that student still hasn't answered, maybe the student's being stubborn, then you would go maybe to a third student and ask them for the right answer. By this time, probably everybody else in the class knows what the right answer is, so this is not going to be much of a problem. And they give it the answer, and maybe you have them repeat it. You go back to the first student, and by this time, or maybe the next round like this, the first student has realized that the only way he's going to get off the hook is if he gives the answer.
Great, so number 3 is don't give students an opt-out. All right, how about number 4?
Don't stress negative behavior. Put the emphasis on the positive. So you're in class and you see Enrique bothering Alicia. What you don't want to do is say, Enrique, stop bothering Alicia. Because first of all, he's embarrassed to be caught out. Second, everybody's looking, oh, is Enrique in trouble again? So instead you say to Enrique, Enrique, sit up straight, look at me. Then you've given him only one option. It's the good behavior option, and you've shown him what good behavior is.
Great. So don't number 4 is don't focus on the negative behavior. Instead, focus on the positive behavior you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So we have done most of the do's and don'ts, but we have one left. So if you could go ahead and walk us through the...
I'm sorry.
Oh, I've
No, please.
completely forgotten what I was going to say.
Please don't talk over students just as I'm sorry, talked over you.
I see what you did there.
And particularly in language class, the whole focus is on the students practicing speaking and listening as much as possible. If you're interrupting them, you've interrupted that good practice. But more importantly, psychologically, you've sent the signal that you're not very important to me. I have status.
And that is exactly how I felt, Brock.
Oh, well, I'm so pleased you felt that way.
Okay, so we have walked you through, by we I mean Brock has walked you through, the 5 do's and the 5 don'ts of classroom management.
I couldn't have done it without Lara.
Thank you. Thanks for watching TEFL Talk. If you want updates on new episodes, be sure to subscribe.
Do you have a great idea for a show topic?
Or maybe you just want to say hey. Either way, we would love to hear from you.
Whether you're joining us from Morocco or Ecuador,
Or Mozambique or Ukraine.
just leave us a comment and let us know. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Lara.
I'm Brock.
And welcome to TEFL Talk. Hi, and welcome back to TEFL Talk. This is episode 2, and I'm so glad that my co-host Brock Brady has joined me again for this very exciting episode.
And I'm pleased to be invited back.
Excellent. So today we are talking about student-centered teaching. Now, Brock, this is something that I have heard about over the years, and I'm wondering, is it worth all of the hype?
Yes, it is. Of course, now, student-centered teaching is a little bit like kittens. It's hard to be against them. And consequently, if you talk to almost any teacher, they'll say, oh yes, I'm very student-centered. But then if you have an opportunity to observe their class, it's like, where's the student-centeredness?
Can you just briefly explain to me what isn't student-centered teaching?
Not surprisingly, it's teacher-centered teaching, where the focus is on taking care of the teacher, keeping the teacher as having the center of attention, the teacher having the control of what's happening.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, student-centered teaching equals good, whereas teacher-centered teaching equals bad. Am I right?
Well, nothing's black and white. I mean, you can't just turn your class over to the students. They're counting on you to give it some structure.
All right, so you heard it here. Even our most purist of student-centered teaching experts, Brock Brady, will tell you there are times where you might need to put a little bit of teacher-centered teaching into your student-centered teaching. Let's talk about the pragmatic side of this. What does this look like?
Well, one of the first things we might want to do is to help all students participate. So I might start out with one of my students that needs a little bit more help than others, Luis. And so here we go, we're into the lesson. Hey, Luis, how you doing today? It's good to see you again. Are you ready to work with me? Okay, so here we go. Okay, I know you can do this, all right? So set this up. So we know that in the air, there's oxygen. Remember oxygen? How about the water? Is there oxygen in the water? And Luis says, yes. And I'm very happy. And Luis has answered that question, and he's in the game, and we're on top of it. Now I go to another student, struggling a little bit ago, Francesca, and I say to her, okay, what's water made out of? Francesca's really on a roll today. She says oxygen and hydrogen. So I say oxygen and hydrogen. Yes, that's right. Great job. Aminatu. Okay, can you take this a step further? Can you tell me what the formula for water is? And Aminatu's on her game today. She says, yes, it's H2O. Now I want to make sure I keep Luis in the game, so I ask him to do something he can do. And I said, Luis, could you write that up on the board? And Luis goes up there, H2O, does it good, he's in there. And now I turn to one of my kind of typical students, and I turn to her and I say, okay, what's the formula for water? And she says, H2O. And then I turn to Young Hee, who's one of my students that happy to raise her hand very often, and I say, but what does that mean? And she's with me, she's on board. She says, well, it's 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. And so, wow, we're doing great. And I look to Ibrahim, who's one of my best students, and I ask him to come in and kind of give a reminder. And I said, what's an atom? And he gives the definition. And I say to everybody, wow, great job. Thank you very much.
I love this example. I love what you did. You kind of walked us through how you can take a classroom full of students at different levels and really meet them where they are. Can you do the same thing with number 2 on our list?
Number 2, let's see, that would be help all students feel acknowledged and respected. When you're juggling the content of the class and trying to stick to your lesson plan and making sure that you're not running out of time and making sure that all the students are participating and nobody's goofing off, sometimes you can just forget about the people and the personalities that are surrounded with you, and the students may be working as hard and with as much goodwill as you are. But it's great if you can help them know it.
I would love to know how that feels.
Okay. I've been meaning to tell you this. I really appreciate working with you. You're such a professional. It's great to have the opportunity to have this experience. So thank you very much.
You know, I appreciate that, and I feel really motivated to move on to number 3.
So the next one is help promote a sense of shared responsibility. If you give students responsibility, then they feel more empowered, they feel more engaged. And it's not hard to do. It can be so simple as asking, oh, Tony, could you help Lisa find page 47 in her book? No, you could have said, Lisa, turn to page 47, but you wouldn't have been getting the participation. What a lot of teachers do sometimes is that at the beginning of the class, they work with the students to together come up with what the class rules are.
Yeah, I like that. Taking some of the weight off the teacher while also empowering the students. I think that's great. All right, what's next?
Make lessons meaningful. Sometimes the students don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and it can be particularly the case when you're learning a language. You may not understand a lot of the terms and everything. And for example, let's imagine that the teacher gets up in front of the class at the beginning of class and says, "Okay, students, today we're going to learn about the simple present." Well, I can almost guarantee you there's going to be many students in there going, So let students know why this is worth using up their time on. Tell the students what they can do with it. Tell them, today we're going to talk about things that are always true. We're going to talk about facts. And then they'll have a sense of, oh, well, there's a point to this, and I can do something with it afterwards. So making sure that students know why they are doing what they're doing and how that's meaningful for them, how it will help them.
All right, well, we are ready for the last one. Yes.
So the last one is being a guide on the side.
I have a little bit of an issue with this because being a teacher to me allows me to be the ruler of schoolers, the top of the crop, the king in the ring, the chief of the peeps. I mean, isn't this what we do as teachers?
Well, first of all, let me say, again, we're coming back to an idea we've talked about several times about the teacher not as the sage on the stage, but as the coach. Not the person that does it, but the person who tells you how to do it and then kind of checks you as you're going along to make sure you're doing it okay.
As a recap, here are 5 things you can do as a student-centered teacher. Help all students participate. Help students feel acknowledged. Help promote a sense of shared responsibility. Help make lessons meaningful. And help by being a guide on the side.
One of the things that should happen if you're doing student-centered teacher is that you really earn the genuine respect of your students. And wouldn't that feel a little bit like the schooler of the ruler?
The ruler of the schooler, but I like how you tried. Well, like Brock said, student-centered teaching, it's hard to be against, kind of like
kittens.
Meow, meow. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching TEFL Talk. If you want updates on new episodes, be sure to subscribe.
Do you have a great idea for a show topic?
Or maybe you just want to say hey. Either way, we would love to hear from you.
Whether you're joining us from Morocco or Ecuador,
or Mozambique or Ukraine,
just leave us a comment and let us know. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Lara.
I'm Brock.
And welcome to TEFL Talk. Hi, welcome back to TEFL Talk. Today we have a great topic. We're going to be talking about differentiated instruction, and I'm here with my co-host, Brock Brady.
This is our third session, third time's the charm, and you know it's going to be charming with someone so charming as Lara with us. So I'm looking forward to today.
Tell that to the guy I cut off on the highway this morning. So Brock, let's just jump in. Tell me about differentiated instruction.
Differentiated instruction is about getting everybody in the game, make sure everybody's playing. And what that means is you have to reach out to different abilities, different interests, but you got to get everybody in the game.
All right, how about I give you a few scenarios and you can kind of help me understand how differentiation would impact the outcomes.
Okay, I'll accept that challenge. But first, I think I want to establish some essential ground rules. I think first and foremost we begin by using the seating chart. And the seating chart is a really important tool. I mean, you've got the students' names and you have to figure out how to pronounce them. You've got to remember how to pronounce them. You want to be able to recognize all your students outside of class as well as inside of class. It's part of showing that you're willing to invest in them. So that's the first and foremost. It's really important to use the seating chart to get to know your students. But you can use the seating chart in another way. One of the things that happens in too many classrooms too often is the teacher is always asking questions, and it's always the same 4 or 5 students that are responding. And that's a challenge in both ways, because the other students aren't participating, but also you as the teacher, you don't have a good idea what the class as a whole is understanding. So the other way you can use the seating chart is to make tallies to make sure that you're calling on all students equitably. So you can move a long ways down the differentiation chart just by using your seating chart.
Great, so all I need to do is use my seating chart to make sure that I know who my students are and that they're participating equitably, and I'm good to go.
That's the first part, but you've got to bring the students into the game, like I said before, and you've got to find out where they're at in the game, what positions they're playing, maybe is a way to think about it. So you want to learn a little bit about them, you want to learn a little bit about their family, because if you can bring those kinds of things in, it makes it a little bit more personal for them. But also, those are basic things that are relatively easy to talk about, and it can give you an idea about the proficiency of different students.
Now, what about checking in with past teachers of the students? Is that fair game?
I'd say it's absolutely essential. If you have any opportunity at all, talk to teachers that are teaching the students currently or have had them before, because they'll have a professional perspective on these students, what they can do and what they can't do. Students sometimes can't self-evaluate very well, but the teachers will be able to help you out a lot. When it comes down to it, students aren't the only ones that need to do the homework.
I didn't know there was going to be homework. Is this going to be on the test?
You never know.
All right, Brock, let's get started with scenario number 1. So imagine that you are in your second day of a new school year.
Yeah.
Your first class, you went around, you made sure you had everybody's names on the name chart, kind of noted a little bit about where they are ability-wise. What do you do next? What do you do next to get more information?
Something I often do is that I ask the students to talk about their families, because that's something they can speak about easily. And I let them have a choice about how they want to tell me about their family. So, for example, for the students that may be the most challenged with proficiency, I might ask them to just draw a picture of their family and put the names over them. And then for students that are a little bit more proficient, I might do something like put 4 or 5 sentences about family on the board and ask them to give answers to those questions. And typically the answers you would ask for would be just like a word or 2, so it's not too demanding. And then finally, for the more advanced students, I might just ask them to write a paragraph about their family. So there's something that everybody can do, and how well they do it gives me even more information about their proficiency. In the example we gave earlier, we were doing it about family, but another one that's very easy to do is student interests, what they're interested in, and you can build that the same way. So again, you're engaging the student, you're giving them choice, they're doing what they want to do.
What about that situation where you can observe that all of your students are learning, however, those who are really out front, the ones in the middle and maybe towards the back, they're not able to catch those students out front. What do you do then?
I'm not really sure I see that as a problem as long as all the students are learning. You'll never be able to catch everybody up to the person that's way out in front. But what you want to do is keep everybody in the game, keep them learning, and work with everybody so that even the student who had the most catching up to do can at least pass the end of the course exam, even if they just pass it by the skin of their teeth. So we can't get everybody on the same page, but we can get everybody up to success on their particular page.
So it sounds like differentiation is really being comfortable knowing that students all start at different places, and they're gonna end at different places too, but as long as there's been growth, that's the goal you're looking for.
Yeah, that's all a teacher can do. A couple other things I want to bring in about differentiation that I think is really important is that you need to change the way you approach things. And one of the things that we know is that too often in too many classes, the teacher is up in front of the class doing Q&A, question and answer, and not all the students are participating, and the teacher is talking more than anybody else. So one way we can bring the students into the game is to change the interaction. Rather than the teacher being the sage on the stage and asking all the questions, we can put students into pairs and put them into groups. And when you put them into pairs and groups, you can be judicious, and if you have a student that's not doing as well as some of the others, you compare them with a student that's doing quite well, and they can support each other. Plus, they can practice without everybody in the room seeing them all at once, so it's a little bit more accommodating.
Well, I've found this discussion on differentiation to be extremely helpful, and I kind of want to recap some of the things that I heard you say. One thing I can do in my class is I can really utilize my seating chart, not just to know where everybody's sitting, but to kind of know a little bit about them and to make sure I'm balancing participation.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I can do is I can use students' lives and their interests to find out more about them, and that also gives me an added benefit of knowing more about their ability level.
Right. And you can give them choice when they're deciding how they want to report to you.
Great, yeah, and that's the last one that I know I'm going to include is different approaches to get the same information. So I haven't really thought about that in the past, but I can structure lesson plans in a way that gives them an opportunity to pick the method that they want to share their information with me.
Yeah.
And last, I just really need to focus on keeping everyone in the game. So I know I can do that by changing my strategy around grouping, around pairing students, sometimes maybe pairing the stronger students with students who need some more support, and also giving them different kinds of opportunities to share their knowledge. So like the example you gave, drawing versus short answer versus paragraphs. Right. So these are things I think I can do. I'm excited to give them a try, and I really appreciate you walking us through this. Now, something tells me, though, that differentiation is more than just what we talked about.
No, I think we really need to think about where we got today. Well, we got to a very good place. It's just the start. There's a lot more that's involved in differentiation, and we'll be coming back and doing that and doing some more on differentiation in other sessions. But hopefully this can get you started.
Well, I am excited to talk more about differentiation in future episodes. And remember, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment box below. Thanks for watching TEFL Talk. If you want updates on new episodes, be sure to subscribe.
Do you have a great idea for a show topic?
Or maybe you just want to say hey. Either way, we would love to hear from you.
Whether you're joining us from Morocco or Ecuador,
or Mozambique or Ukraine,
just leave us a comment and let us know. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Lara.
I'm Brock.
And welcome to TEFL Talk.
Well, I think that TEFL Talk went pretty well, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it went pretty well. What do you think we should do for the next episode?
Well, I don't know. I was thinking about that. The next one up is student-centered teaching, but we've already done one about that. Maybe it'd be good to have a little bit more variety. What do you think?
Good point. How about one on dialogues?
That'd be a good idea. It's really an essential teaching tool. I'll ask Jenny what she thinks about it.
Yeah, great. You know what? Ask John too.
Okay, that's a good idea. I'll be here tomorrow. I can talk to both of them.
Great. Thanks for your help.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for your help.
Hey Brock, thank you so much for agreeing to help me out with this. I think this dialogue is going to be good.
No, it'll be good. You're creating it.
So I was thinking about logistics. I don't want this to be too long. I don't think anyone wants to hear us drone on and on about dialogues.
Good insight. It's nothing worse than a dialogue that goes on for pages. I think somewhere between 10 and 6 lines is fine.
I was thinking like 6 to 8. Is that?
Sure, that's great.
Okay.
There's only so much that students can focus on at once, so shorter is better.
Yeah. I know we would tell other teachers to make it relevant, so I want to make sure I make it relevant.
Yeah, it should be something that reflects the language the students might actually use, and it needs to be the appropriate formality, not too informal, not too slangy, obviously.
Yeah, the gentleman doth make a good point.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that, okay?
Touché, fine, sir. So I'm going to have Speaker A start, I think. So Speaker A was...
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please do.
It's good to give names. It's just a lot easier to figure out who's talking when you're reading the dialogue.
Okay, Speaker A, Brock.
Okay.
Speaker B, Lara. I'm just randomly generating these names.
Yeah, no, picked them out of the blue. That's really great. I like that creativity.
So I'm also going to make sure I keep each term pretty short.
Yeah.
I'll be mindful of proficiency.
Good,
I don't want to make this too easy, but I don't want it to be too hard either.
No, but if you do have opportunities to bring in idioms or common expressions, that's not a bad thing. It kind of gives students a bit of empowerment to know that they can use the language that native speakers do.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So use idioms. So I'm going to work in cats have 9 lives.
You could do that.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it about in terms of dialogue creation, but you may want to think a little bit about how you're going to do it in the class, how you're going to exploit it so that you get maximum value.
Okay. Can you help me out with that?
Sure. I mean, one of the first things to do is to activate student background knowledge. You can ask them some questions about the topic. If you're doing a grammar feature or a language function, you can ask them questions about that and see if they can answer.
Okay.
So that they're kind of set up for what's supposed to come next.
Got it, yeah.
The other thing you want to do is not to miss the opportunity of using a dialogue for listening comprehension.
Right.
So before you hand out copies to everybody, you want to read it a couple of times and see if they can tell you what it's about.
So read it out loud before you give it to them so I see.
Yeah.
Makes
if
sense.
you give it to them and then read it aloud, they'll just be reading.
Gotcha. Okay.
The other thing is it's important to pay attention to vocabulary and help them notice new vocabulary, what might be new vocabulary to them, and not to neglect pronunciation.
Right.
And a good way to do pronunciation with a dialogue is have students get into pairs and they each take a role and they read to each other. And you can listen closely and find out where you need to make corrections.
Excellent. Okay. I think these are great tips. I'm going to need a few minutes. And if
Okay.
you're open to it, maybe we can practice and you can tell me what you think.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just sit here and drink coffee.
Okay, perfect. All right, Brock, hot off the printer.
For me, thank you.
So I was thinking you can play Brock. I'll play Lara.
It's funny how that worked out. Okay.
So you're up first.
Oh, I am, aren't I? Okay. Well, I think that TEFL Talk came out okay, don't you?
Yeah, I did. What should we do for next session?
Well, the next thing up on the list is student-centered teaching, but we already did a video that kind of introduced that. Maybe since we're still in the pilot stage, we should do something a little bit different, give a little bit more diversity.
How about one on dialogues?
That's a good idea. That's practical, and it's something that teachers really need. I'll ask Jenny what she thinks about it.
Yes, that's a good idea. And how about checking with John as well?
Sure. I'll be in tomorrow, so I'll see both of them.
Great. And if they agree, maybe we can sit down together and talk about how to get started?
Sure. Makes perfect sense to me.
I'll do some thinking tonight and I'll come up with some questions for you.
Okay. And I'll try to come up with some answers.
Great. Thanks for the help.
Anytime. But doesn't this seem oddly familiar?
Thanks for watching TEFL Talk. If you want updates on new episodes, be sure to subscribe.
Do you have a great idea for a show topic?
Or maybe you just want to say hey. Either way, we would love to hear from you.
Whether you're joining us from Morocco or Ecuador,
Or Mozambique or Ukraine.
just leave us a comment and let us know. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Lara.
I'm Brock.
And welcome to TEFL Talk. Hi, welcome back to TEFL Talk. I'm here with my co-host Brock Brady.
Hi everybody, how you doing?
And today we are going to talk about how to localize a lesson. So that's quite a mouthful. Localize a lesson?
It's a little long and things like that.
It is. But it is a great thing. It's a great topic. So Brock, what does it mean to localize a lesson?
you want to make learning easy for your students. So the more familiar that something is, the more it relates to their daily experience, the less they'll have to think about what the context is, and the more they can think about the communicative purpose and the structures that they're practicing. What you don't want is the context to distract from the lesson. Imagine you're working with some middle school students in a poor rural area, and you had this great lesson that you used with another audience one time, and you're trying to teach them small talk. But the small talk example that other time that works so well for you is about two international businessmen. So two international businessmen, they've met and they're trying to have small talk so that they can build up some relationships. And one of the businessmen talks about jet lag. Well, I'm not sure that any of those students in that rural village know what jet lag is. Now, possibly I can explain it to them so they can kind of understand. They won't ever have had the experience of it. But by the time I've done that, they've completely lost track of anything else we were thinking about or doing. And, small talk is kind of a subtle sort of concept to get across. So you've just kind of wasted everybody's time. So you have to set your location, you have to set your context with things that students can relate to so they can think about what they're trying to communicate.
Great. Well, when you put it like that, it seems like a no-brainer. And you actually just contextualize this for me, because as an English teacher who has taught small talk before, I can kind of clearly see how this example would fall flat if I didn't localize my lesson for the particular audience.
Well, thank you. That's exactly what you're trying to do for your students. And I want to insist that it's not just a matter of situating a location. You need to think, for example, about your student's age. You wouldn't want to use a TV show for primary school students with a secondary audience or things like that. You need to think about whether your students are represented in terms of gender, in terms of race, in terms of status. You want to make something that's relevant to them, something they can relate to. Just to give you another example, if you're teaching in Cambodia and you want to teach language to use to talk about holidays, probably Thanksgiving is not your best option. Best to talk about some Cambodian holiday, and again, the students will be able to concentrate more on what the language is they're trying to learn and the communicative purpose that it solves.
So Brock, do you have any tried and true examples, maybe activities that our savvy TEFL Talk viewers can take away and use in their classroom, maybe even today or tomorrow?
Sure, and these are kind of low context activities to begin with, so they're easily adaptable. I think the first activity you can think about, and these all kind of can line up together, is do a community mapping project. And so you have a piece of paper, or maybe you can save your Blackboard to another class where the students come in and they draw all the features that are important to them of their community, and they label the features, the maps, the roads, the places they go, and what they do there. And so they're participating in the sense that they're labeling everything that's important to them in English. But then you can go another step and use that community map for practicing prepositions, for giving directions, for learning how to describe different locations and what their importance is. So you can build many lessons off of that community map.
Oh, that's great. So one activity, so many uses. And I think an added benefit is if you as the facilitator are new to the community, you're going to learn a lot from the activity. I mean, you're going to learn where all the hotspots are, you're going to maybe find a new grocery store, who knows?
And in some ways, the students are developing a whole new perspective on their community because they're describing it to somebody else.
That's great. What about another one?
Well, I'm glad you like it. I mean, one of the things about being localizable is...
I gotta stop you there. Is localizable a word?
Well, I think if localizable is understandable and pronounceable, it's defensible, isn't it?
Ooh. All right, you got me. With so many vowels, I'll give it to you.
Okay, you're very convincible. Another thing that's good to do is you can send students out on assignments and have them listen and look for English. They might be hearing some English at the internet cafe. They might be seeing English on some products, or maybe there's a movie in town that's English with dubbing or something like that, so that they become more aware of how English is being used in the community. But in addition to that, it's also a way that you can make lessons that you have more relevant to what they're doing in their lives.
Sounds to me like a great field trip opportunity as well. And everybody likes to get out of the classroom, and I think seeing English gives people, the sense that there really is a purpose behind what they're learning.
That's right. I mean, it's good for the students. The community sees that there's something going on there. The students are getting some benefit out of it. And community engagement is really important. So that's another thing you can do is, if by chance there's adults in the village that speak a little bit of English, shop owners, people like that, why, maybe you can get them in the game too. Maybe you can have the students come visit them. Let's say if you have a restaurant owner, they could come to the restaurant and practice ordering, something like that. If somebody at the bank spoke English, they could go there and practice English talking about banking, things like that. So that's another very good way to make English seem to be more communicative and more related to the community.
Yeah, and how motivating for students to see people within their own community using English as a part of their daily life, and also as a source of opportunity. Brock, I think we have time for one more activity. Do you have one last one you want to share with our viewers before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I do. I just pick up something we said in another session, is that it's really important for students to have an opportunity to speak about themselves and to speak about their lives. And so again, you can talk about family relationships, you can talk about student interests, the sorts of things that they hope to be able to do. And again, the contextualization there, it makes it very English a part of their lives. So I think that can add a lot.
Great. Well, Brock, you have once again done it. You have made localizing a lesson, as much of a mouthful as it is, sound pretty easy. So as a review, here are the 4 activities that Brock shared, ready for you to use in your class. Number 1 is to make a map of the community and use it for a variety of conversation prompts and vocabulary building opportunities. Number 2 is to have students identify where in their communities they can see or hear authentic English. Number 3 is to work with an English-speaking business owner and have students practice purposeful interactions. Number 4, last but not least, have students describe their families, their interests, and their aspirations. And if you happen to use one of these activities, we'd love to hear how it went. So leave us a comment below.
Lara, you've done it once again. Another great job. I really appreciate it.
I just asked the questions.
Yeah. But you set me up for the answers, and that's what counts.
Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you for another episode of TEFL Talk.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching TEFL Talk. If you want updates on new episodes, be sure to subscribe.
Do you have a great idea for a show topic?
Or maybe you just want to say hey. Either way, we would love to hear from you.
Whether you're joining us from Morocco or Ecuador,
or Mozambique or Ukraine,
just leave us a comment and let us know. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Lara.
I'm Brock.
And welcome to TEFL Talk. Hi, and welcome back to TEFL Talk. As always, I am here with my co-host and TEFL expert, Brock Brady.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? Going to solve the problems of teaching again today.
Ah, indeed. And today is a great one because we're going to talk about critical thinking. So I know that we are supposed to, as teachers, develop our students' critical thinking skills, but what does that mean?
It's about solving problems.
Okay, so would you say it helps students to learn how to make informed decisions?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And decision making is the essence of critical thinking.
I'm curious to know, as English teachers, are there certain languages that support critical thinking maybe over others?
No, absolutely not. No language is better engaging in critical thinking than another one. What I really do encourage, though, is if teachers have the choice, or the possibility, they should work with students in their home language and have them develop critical thinking in their home language first. And then it's easier to just automatically transfer that if they need to learn another language. That doesn't mean that you can't teach critical thinking while you're teaching English or some other language to students, but it's always best if they can begin in their home language.
So it's always worthwhile to start building that base in the first language,
Awesome.
and those skills would then just transfer to the other languages.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Let's try kind of a hands-on approach.
Okay.
Can you help me walk through how I might use critical thinking to make an informed decision?
Well, let's try a few questions. What are you thinking about?
So let's imagine I'm in the market for a new pet. How might I approach this with some critical thinking types of questions?
Well, first of all, I think a very important question is there room in your life for a pet right now?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I am 9 months pregnant, you may have noticed. There is not
Nothing gets by me. Nothing.
there is not room in my life for a needy pet. However, I will have some time to be at home, so I'll have an opportunity and maybe want a companion that is not crying all the time to maybe interact with. So I think that, yeah, my life could accommodate a low maintenance pet.
It sounds like you've narrowed it down, and I dare say you probably have something in mind. Is that right? I bet you're thinking about a cat.
Hedgehog.
A hedgehog? Really?
I mean, a cat didn't even dawn on me.
Well, I guess a hedgehog would be a good pet. I don't know. Do you know something about them?
I know that they don't require walking,
Okay.
and I hear they eat cat food.
Okay, well, that's something positive about them. So, okay, maybe that's a good idea.
Well, it took very few questions to kind of narrow down the list of possibilities, although we may have disagreed on what my outcome was. I do think that this line of questioning probably is transferable in the classroom.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So how could you make these kinds of questions, or how do you focus on the importance of this type of questioning with your students?
What you should be trying to help the students to do is to identify problems, figure out what assumptions they're making or not, and follow the steps in a method to come to a reasoned conclusion.
So to kind of get at the nature of the problem, which is what I did
Yeah.
when I knew that really what I needed was something that wasn't needy. And
Yeah.
so it helped me to eliminate.
Exactly.
Well, Brock, you are always great at giving our viewers actionable tips and activities to take away. So I'm hoping that maybe you have some prepared for us today.
The first one to talk about is a very common technique that's known as KWL.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the teacher asks the students, what do you know about a hedgehog?
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to know about a hedgehog? And I like this, what would you want to know about a hedgehog? Because the want there gives the students kind of some agency and some investment in that. It's not just we're going to learn the lesson the teacher gave to us, but they're going to find out some things that are interesting to them. And then at the end of the lesson comes the L, what did you learn? So you do a little debriefing, which is always good for critical thinking. What did you learn? Kind of recreate the process. So that's a very good activity.
So that's great.
And then another very common activity is think, pair, share. So you ask the students at the beginning individually to think about a question or a problem, and they try to develop an answer. And then you have two students share in a pair, and that gives them an opportunity to kind of try out what they've come up with. They may come up with something that's a contribution of both of them. It's an opportunity for them to speak in a place where they're not being listened to by everybody, so they can build up their confidence a little bit. And then when that's done, you bring the whole class back together and you have people share out, and you can compare different visions and different opinions of what they've come up with.
Great.
So that creates creative thinking.
Yeah, I like that one. It's nice because it includes that report out strategy as well.
A third one is making connections,
Mm-hmm.
and this is very often associated with developing reading comprehension. So whenever a student has been engaged in a reading, afterwards you ask the students, well, how does this connect to your life? Making connections to self. And then the other thing you want to explore is making connections to the world. How does this relate to the real world and the life that we're all living in it? And then the third one, which is a little bit of intertextuality, is making connections between what was read today and what students may have already read before, so they may get used to kind of putting together the pieces of a puzzle.
Yeah, so you're really kind of challenging your students to think with 3 different lenses.
Yes.
And I imagine as you progress, it kind of triggers that critical thinking at a new level and then an even higher level. Yeah. Any more for us?
Well, maybe kind of an activity, which is fun to do. And it's about determining if something is a fact or an opinion.
Ooh, can we do it?
Sure, let's try out a few. Let me see. Madagascar is an island. Is that a fact or an opinion?
That is a fact. Madagascar is an island.
How do you know that it's a fact?
I could, I suppose, take the boring route. I could look at a map and verify that it is an island. My favorite approach would probably be to take a spaceship to look down and to see that pretty blue water all around Madagascar.
Okay. Let's try another one.
Okay.
The Hungarian language is more beautiful than Korean.
I'm going to have to say opinion on that one.
Okay. Why?
Well, for starters, it's impossible to prove. It's a matter of opinion. Some people might like the way one sounds versus others might like the way the other sounds.
Okay, very good. You're reasoning very well.
Hmm.
Which makes a better pet, cats or dogs?
That's going to be an opinion.
Why do you think so?
Again, because it's hard to prove.
Well, okay. I'll let you have that. I think I could come up with some facts that would say that cats are better than dogs, but I think you're right. It's an opinion.
Spoken like a true cat person.
Meow.
Well, Brock, I think all of those activities are really promising, also really easy to incorporate into classrooms, and I love that some of these are things that I'm already using.
And I just want to say, I think it's very important if you can find ways to build critical thinking using techniques you're already doing in the classroom. I think sometimes people think that critical thinking is very difficult to do, that it has to be a complicated process and you have to be very, very well trained in it. But I think if we take a breath and stand back a little bit, I think we can find there are many ways we can help our students improve their critical thinking.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Brock. Thank you for sharing with us, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye all.
Thanks for watching TEFL Talk. If you want updates on new episodes, be sure to subscribe.
Do you have a great idea for a show topic?
Or maybe you just want to say hey. Either way, we would love to hear from you.
Whether you're joining us from Morocco or Ecuador,
or Mozambique or Ukraine,
just leave us a comment and let us know. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Lara.
I'm Brock.
And welcome to TEFL Talk. Hi, and welcome back to TEFL Talk. Brock, it is really great to see you today. Thanks for being with us, even if it's from miles and miles away.
Laura, it's great to see you. It's been a long time. Oh, sorry.
Whoa. Social distancing, Brock.
Sorry. Okay, here we go.
All right. Hey, Brock, do you happen to notice anything different about me at all from last time we filmed?
You've got a wonderful smile.
Oh, well, thank you. I also am no longer 9 months pregnant.
That's right.
Thank you for being willing to talk to us today about formative assessment. Formative assessment is a natural thing that a lot of teachers do. But can you kind of start us off from the beginning? What is it?
Basically, it's a partnership between the student and the teacher to find quick, effective ways that you can find out whether the students are keeping up with what you're teaching or not.
That sounds great. So it sounds like a great way that you could make adjustments if you find that your students maybe aren't learning at the pace or in the way that you were hoping that they're learning.
That's right, and then you can make any adjustments that are necessary.
What are some examples of those adjustments?
You could adjust the pace of the learning. You could review the content a little bit. You might change the medium of instruction, trying to approach what you're trying to teach from a different angle. A couple things that you might need to know about formative assessments is that they're very intuitive. They're typically not graded. They're kind of like check-ins. For example, on your car every now and again you want to check the oil and make sure you've got enough oil. So you put the dipstick in and you see how it's going on that. So dipsticking is a term that's used a lot in formative assessment because we're teaching the class is going along, the students are participating, but we want to find if they're participating in the right way or not.
What are some things that I should consider when I'm doing formative assessment?
First of all, it's really important to do a diverse and inclusive sampling. Don't just call on the same 3 or 4 people all the time, because if you just call on the same 3 or 4 people all the time, you'll get good answers, but you'll get good answers from them, and you'll have no idea whether the rest of the class is doing the same or not. Another thing to think about too that I think is really important is that it's very important, you're asking earlier why it's important for, although formative assessment may seem natural things to watch out for, a good example is asking yes/no questions about student comprehension. If you say to students, hey, did you understand that? Or you get that? Or is that okay? They're going to nod their heads yes. In part because they don't want to be embarrassed, in part because they're not really sure if they know or not. So if you just give them a choice of yes or no, they're going to say yes and you're not going to know anything. But if you give them a wider variety of choice, if you give them, say, from 1 to 2, from 1 to 5, and they choose the one that fits best, they'll likely choose something in between 1 and 5, and that'll help you make a decision. Another thing to think about is timeliness, and by that I mean catching the wave, knowing when it's the right time to do it. So you're in class teaching. If you wait until the end of the class to find out what students have known, if there was something they missed, they're not going to get it back. So it's the nice thing about formative assessment is you can check very quickly and find out if the students are keeping up with you or not, whether they need more practice, whether they need more information. And again, you can do that with simple gestures. Yes, hands up for yes, hands no. Do you need more practice? Yes, no. True or false? Yes, no. There's a lot of things you can do very simply there to catch in the moment whether they're understanding or not.
I feel confident enough that I could probably recap.
That would be great. We could find out if you're keeping up as we're going along.
All right. So, one thing that you mentioned that I am going to absolutely make sure I do is to get a diverse sampling. The second thing that you mentioned is not asking just yes or no questions, but rather giving students the opportunity to maybe use their thumbs or to use a scale from 1 to 5. And the last one is timeliness. So I will make sure that I am giving students real-time opportunities to provide feedback and also not waiting till the end because then I can't make my adjustments.
By George, I think she's got it. I want to share 2 formative assessments that our viewers can use right away. The first one's called an idea wave. Now, this is easy to do, but it's important. It's got 2 parts. First, there's the idea, the concept you're trying to teach. You want to see how much students are learning it. And then there's the language that you're trying to help them acquire that they can build around to talk about the concept. The second part, the sentence frames, usually what you do is you give them to the students on the board and you do some practice with them making some sentences. For example, with formative assessment, you might have some sample frames like, formative assessment, one thing I know about formative assessment is blah, blah, blah. Or simply, formative assessment is blah, blah, blah. Or formative assessment helps teachers, blah, 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 blah. Or a type of formative assessment that I want to try out is, okay, so those are their frames, and they have the frames, we've been listening in class, they have the concepts, they put them together. So you give them a few minutes to put them all together, and then you start calling random students around the room, they get to try out their answers. If somebody had the same answer they did, they have to try to come up with a new and different answer if they can. But it's called an idea wave because it really curves around the room.
It's like at a baseball game, the wave, right?
Yep. This final formative assessment I want to share with you all is exit cards. And the exit card has the concept of, here are a couple of concepts that that we have, and probably you'll give them to the student at the beginning of the class so they can see them. Simple things they can easily remember. And then you go through the class and the bell rings and it's time for everybody to go. Well, before people can go out the door, it's a game. They have to give a correct answer to one or two things on the exit ticket. The exit ticket can be written or it can just be oral, depending on what you want to do. And so you're standing by the doors, people go out, and you're asking for their answers, and they get both answers, they go along. If somebody has a trouble, you tease them about it just a little bit perhaps, but you don't want to punish them or give them a complex, so you help them find the answer and they go. And it kind of creates a conceptual basket that they can carry out the door of two very simple but important concepts that were learned that day. So if their parents should ask them, "What'd you learn today?" they've got an answer. So that's an exit ticket. It's really simple. It's easy to do. Kids get used to it. It becomes a routine.
I love it.
One final thing that I want to know, on a scale from 1 to 5, how much do you feel like you've learned today?
Brock, on a scale of 1 to 5, for today, I give you a 6.
Well, I thank you very much. For that, you may exit, and no homework for you tonight.
Thanks for watching TEFL Talk. If you want updates on new episodes, be sure to subscribe.
Do you have a great idea for a show topic?
Or maybe you just want to say hey. Either way, we would love to hear from you.
Whether you're joining us from Morocco or Ecuador,
Or Mozambique or Ukraine,
just leave us a comment and let us know. Thank you very much.